The Nightmare Before Christmas is a genuinely classic film. Mixing the dark and spookiness of Halloween and mixing the joy that Christmas brings, combine that with clever stop-motion animation that still holds up today and memorable songs, amongst many other qualities, all good, has resulted in a film that was the first animated film to be nominated for the Academy Award for Best Visual Effects, a cult following that is still strong and has plenty of merchandise and all sorts of works. With a film with a strong cult following, The Nightmare Before Christmas is the perfect target for a video game. The only real console game of any kind involving this universe, not counting Kingdom Hearts appearances. This is the only one. The Nightmare Before Christmas, Oogie's Revenge. Developed by Capcom and published by Capcom in Japan and Europe, with Buena Vista Games handling North American publishing, this game was released in Japan on October 21st, 2004, September 30th, 2005 for Europe, and October 10th, 2005 for North America on the PS2 and Xbox. This game is a sequel to the actual movie and is very faithful to the film in that regard, but the gameplay, well, let's just take a look. The game takes place 1 year after the movie. Jack Skellington feels Halloween is becoming a bit boring. With the help of Dr. Finkelstein, he not only gets some new ideas, he also gets the Soul Robber, the main weapon of the game. He leaves Halloween Town to find new frights and leaves Dr. Finkelstein in charge. With no one to guard the town while the Pumpkin King is away, Lock, Shock, and Barrel take advantage of this and revive Oogie Boogie. When Jack comes back on Christmas Eve, he's ambushed. Soon after, he learns that Oogie is back, inadvertently caused Finkelstein to trap the citizens, release monsters, and kidnap Sally. On top of that, all the doors to all the holiday towns have gone missing. It's up to Jack to save the town and restore order to the land of holidays. Oogie's Revenge, at its core, is a 3D action-adventure hack-and-slash, very similar to Capcom's own Devil May Cry. Except where Devil May Cry is a much faster-paced action game with emphasis on combos and getting creative with them, this game is more or less a point A to point B action game that just happens to have hack-and-slashing. If anything, the roots of Devil May Cry are here. This game, though, does seem to lean more into Onimusha and Castlevania Lament of Innocence / Curse of Darkness territory. In fact, in North America, this game came out 3 weeks before Curse of Darkness. This game has more emphasis on puzzles than Devil May Cry. You'll move from point A to B in the level with a goal in mind to advance the story. As you beat enemies in the level, you'll gain souls that will allow you to buy upgrades in the Witch's Shop.
The best bargain in town!
You have crystal bottles that you can fill water with that will refill your health. That's this game's version of health pickups. Golden pumpkins increase Jack's health by 1 point, and blue souls will boost the Soul Robber's power. The Soul Robber itself is the main weapon of the game and the only one Jack uses. Not counting the other things and the other costumes, but more on that later. It's more like a whip than it is a sword. Now you see why I made the Castlevania comparisons? You have basic combo attack that starts out at 2 to 3 hits but can be upgraded via the shop, or just using cheat code because the game won't warn you about this until it's too late. You also have a strong attack that you can grab an enemy with and keep smashing them into the ground, or charge it up by holding the strong attack button, grab the enemy, and Cesaro swing them around. Taunting enemies will make them change form, and killing them in the charged state leaves more souls. You have a soul spin, which will clear enemies that gang upon you, and you can use the whip to grab onto objects. It may sound like a lot, but it's really not. The combo doesn't change, and by and large, you will end up just using the same strategy of grab enemy, swing them around, and then clear up remaining enemies. That's it. Or at least, most of it. There are 2 costumes Jack can change into during battle. First, the Pumpkin King. This allows Jack to spit out fire as long as the red soul counter lasts. And he can also throw out a fire bomb, which is more like a ring of fire, which damages enemies in range and uses 1 full red soul. There's also Santa Jack. Santa Jack can throw out presents, and when an enemy hits them, or you open them when they get near, it spooks them. There are 3 present types. One that stuns the target, one that makes the enemies come out of possessed objects, and one that freezes them. The last other thing to mention is the boss battles. They seem to be like the boss battles in Devil May Cry, but there's a twist. Because this game is based on a musical or a movie musical, when you attack the boss, music notes jump out of the boss. Collect enough of them up to fill up a meter, and the game will enter a rhythm minigame. When the buttons hit the center of the marker, you must push them. Complete the minigame and you'll do a good chunk of damage to the boss, or if their health is enough, less than half, and you completely do it, you can pretty much knock them out right then and there. Most of the bosses play out with the attack strategy, with the exception of Dr. Finkelstein, who has a different strategy. Sounds like everything is coming together for a hell of a time, huh? Well, not fully. This game wants to be a slower version of Devil May Cry or Lament of Innocence. The way the game feels, though, it actually feels more in line with parts of Devil May Cry 2 than it does when the original mixed with Lament of Innocence. So it's like you basically put the first two Devil May Cries in a blender, give them a Nightmare Before Christmas skin, tweak some things, and this is what you get. The problem is, this creates a clash of gameplay styles. Devil May Cry 1 and 2 have enough differences to where they almost feel like different games. It's like it's trying to mix both, but it's not doing a very good job at it. For starters, while the game wants your time to be fast for strong rankings, the puzzle solving slows it down, especially some of the later puzzles, which can get hectic. And for first-time players, they will be lost entirely if they aren't paying attention, and the game really doesn't remind you where you need to go. On top of that, the game's menu system is awful. For a game based on a quick action game, well, the menus feel clunky, slow, and there's not even an easy map access button, which would help just a bit. The fade-ins take way too long. There's also not an easy way to use items on the fly, like Blue Souls. It ends up slowing down the combat and makes it feel dragged out, since you're having to waste time going in and out of menus every time you need to refill your health. Even Devil May Cry 2 didn't feel this dragged out and didn't have that bad of a menu system. Two other things also hurt the gameplay a bit: the camera and the continue system. The camera itself can't be controlled. While in the action sequences this isn't too much of an issue, the platforming suffers from this. You'll use the Soul Robber at some points to jump from point to point, and actually that's the only way you can jump. Jack just can't jump natively. But you're not always given the best angles, leading to misjudgment of where things are, and you'll fall into a pit, be reset at the back of the level, and have to try again. The hanging tree seems to suffer from this a bit, as well as a later section in the town. Also, the damn continue system. When you run out of health, you're given the option to continue, but they just had to make it feel limited, bastards. When you continue, you will have to spend 20% of your souls. There is a trick, though. If you stop the timer on 777, you'll get 500 souls. Land on the number of the beast, he'll only get a single pumpkin and not lose souls. Stop at the absolute last moment, you'll get 500 souls and refill everything as long as you have one gold pumpkin. Devil May Cry didn't pull this shit, so why are Capcom doing this here? It sucks that the gameplay feels a bit mismatched because the actual controls work well. The moves are easy to pull off and combining them works, probably because you only have so many attacks here. Though it probably feels more natural with a PlayStation 2 controller than an Xbox controller, since Devil May Cry was originally a PS2 trilogy, so I'd give the slight edge to the PS2 version on controls. Navigating menus could have been streamlined more though to not interrupt the gameplay flow like I mentioned earlier. The graphics here look pretty good. The atmosphere of Halloween Town and surrounding areas all look pretty good. Models look good with solid facial animations that help reflect the character moods and performances. Environments are rendered well and shadows are reflected well given the limitations. Christmas Town also looks great and is a nice break from the spooky environments, even though you don't get to spend a heck of a whole lot of time in Christmas Town. It looks better on the Xbox thanks to 480p progressive scan support. The PS2 version doesn't support progressive scan and does look a little worse in some parts with the usual suspects of aliasing and what have you. Though regardless of which version you have, the frame rate does remain pretty solid throughout, keeping 60 FPS even though some of the most action-heavy bits, when a lot of action is going on throughout the screen, can get hectic. The sound also further brings the universe to life. The music here is very much on par with the original movie. In fact, it almost sounds lifted straight from the original film. Well, hold up a minute, playa. The actual game soundtrack is composed by Kengo Hagiwara and Masaya Tsunemoto. It's so weird because many of the songs fit the universe, and yet Danny Elfman is MIA. That's because most of the songs here are actually slightly derived versions of the original songs. I say mostly because this is Halloween Returns, but does sound slightly different thanks to some of the characters singing having different voice actors. More on that in a moment. It still sounds awesome, but it does play just about every time you enter regular combat, and it can get pretty repetitive fast. There's only one new original song in the game, and that's Dr. Finkelstein's song, which plays during his boss battle. And it's probably the best song in the game, in my opinion. The dueling lyrical battle between the two just sounds awesome, and it's hard not to get sucked up in it.
Doctor, please, oh, can't you see you're wrong?
You were the king, but now you're nothing but prey. Oogie Boogie is back and he's planning to stay.
Every other song is a slightly different version of its original counterpart. Making Christmas becomes Take Our Town Back, Kidnap the Santa Claus becomes Hail to Mr. Oogie, Finale becomes Spiral Hill, and What's This becomes Oh No. Sally's song is also slightly reworked for the game, and Oogie Boogie's song was reworked from its original version, and has a derived version twice, Casino Clash and a Filthy Finale. This method was probably the best though to keep the music in tone with the game. Sound effects also fit well and match the game's atmosphere. The voice acting is pretty good. Most of the original cast come back to reprise their roles from the film. Chris Sarandon, Glenn Shaddix, Ken Page, and Paul Rubens all reprise their roles from the film as Jack, the Mayor, Oogie Boogie, and Locke. Sadly, William Hickey, the voice of Dr. Finkelstein, died before the game entered production and is replaced by Jess Harnell, who does a good job. Catherine O'Hara, Sally/Shock, Ed Ivory, Santa Claus, and Danny Elfman, Beryl, and Jack's singing voice, are all also MIA for reprising their roles, and are re-replaced by Kath Soucie, Corey Burton, and D. Bradley Baker. The replacement actors do a good job and fit in alongside the reprising actors. The singing is also well done, and it's nice to have Sarandon exercise his pipes doing singing stuff, even if it's just because Danny Elfman was probably busy at the time. The game does have a bit of replayability on top of that. There are extra costumes to unlock depending on how well you do, and if you do the secret chapters, which, should you decide to go further, will keep you busy for a while. The Nightmare Before Christmas Oogie's Revenge is a game that revels in its atmosphere. It looks and sounds amazing, controls well, and has an awesome soundtrack, and it really does feel like a sequel to the film. However, the gameplay itself feels like, while it does take the best elements of Devil May Cry 1 and 2, it also takes some of those two games' worst elements and put them together, which leaves a game that, while can be fun at times, there are still some frustrations that hold it back. The repetitiveness of the combat, the flow being interrupted by bad menu layout, with transitions taking longer than they should, continues that depend on you getting in-game currency that you need, or luck if you really want to try those tricks I mentioned earlier, bad navigation amongst many other things. It holds the game back from being a great game, and it just brings us an average to above average game. If you are a fan of the movie, you will love this game. It has everything you want in a feasible sequel, and it does present it well. If you aren't, you may want to put this one further down the backlog. PAL copies don't go for any more than $30 currently, which isn't too bad. North American Xbox copies go for $20 to $30, which is probably fair, but the North American PlayStation 2 version goes for about $40, which I can't recommend at that price unless either you're a die-hard fan or you mainly collect multiplats on the PS2 for that era. But if you are a die-hard fan, you probably already own the game anyways. I give The Nightmare Before Christmas Oogie's Revenge a 3.5 out of 5. Thanks for watching. If you like what you saw, click the big red button below to subscribe. Check out the other links in the description for more cool stuff, and check out the playlist on screen for more content. See you in the next video.